Hey, it's Matt. Welcome to this next episode of Courage and Clarity, a conversation with leaders where we talk about how to get the most out of all that we have been given. I want to talk about leadership development today, and I want to talk specifically about three massive leadership development mistakes that I made. And I want to share them with you because I want you to learn from my mistakes. These are mistakes that I do see in a lot of churches, but they're mistakes that you don't have to make. And certainly if you are making those mistakes, you can make corrections and not have to continue to do what you've been doing. So let's walk through these three mistakes. The first one is this. I made it impossible for people to lead. I made it impossible for people to lead. Now, you might think what I'm going to talk about is micromanaging and expecting too much out of people, and that may have been true, but that isn't exactly what was going on. When I moved here in 2004, I was 28 years old and became the lead pastor of what is now Christ Community Church. And I knew that we needed to develop leaders, and so I focused on what I knew, which was to train our officers, our elders and deacons. And so we did what we could in order to develop those men for those roles. But one of the things that we found was that even in developing those men, we still didn't have a big enough team of leaders to be able to get the work done that we needed to get done. And so after a lot of soul searching and a lot of trial and error, then we really began to reimagine what leadership was in our church. That instead of thinking that leadership was a role reserved for a handful of people in our church, we really began to define leadership in a very simple way. We just said that leadership is influence. That whenever somebody shows initiative, whenever they take a next step to help a group of people reach a common goal, that's leadership. And we looked around and saw that all kinds of people were leading well, but we just called them volunteers. And so when we began to think of, talk to, and treat our volunteers as leaders, it really did transform the leadership culture of our church. It transformed our church. So now the formal leadership of our church, our officers now had a team of people around us who could take ownership of what the church was doing. And so we could focus on the work that mattered most. And so I would say this, that if you're struggling to believe that you have enough leaders, one of the things that happens every time I go speak somewhere, it's a conference, it's a church, I'm talking about leadership development, I always ask this question: how many leaders do you have in your church? What's the percentage of people in your church that are leaders? And the number, for whatever reason, I don't care the size conference, I don't care the size church, I don't care the denominational background, the theological tradition, the number I always get back is somewhere around 25%. And I think that's because we've limited leadership to something that only a handful of people can do. But the mistake that you're making there is that not everybody aspires to that role. Not everybody is qualified for that role. Not everybody has the qualifications to be that role. And so if you're just limiting it to a handful of things, you're missing opportunities. So what changed for us was when we began to create a culture in which anyone in our church has an opportunity to lead. That might be working with our children's ministry on a Sunday morning. That could be as an elder and just all kinds of things you can imagine. And so when we began to create that kind of mindset, it really did change our culture in terms of leadership and leadership development. That was the first mistake that I made, though, was making it impossible for people to lead because it was really difficult for anyone to lead. The second mistake that I made was confusing discipleship and leadership development. I don't care who you are. I don't care what church background you're from. I think we could all agree that the core work, the mission of the church is discipleship and making disciples. And I also believe that everything we do in the church is discipleship, including leadership development. So if you're developing leaders, that is an aspect of discipleship. But I do think that if you're going to develop leaders, there are some core competencies that leaders have to grow into, things that they need to know, skills that they need to acquire, habits they need to embody. And so if you don't clearly distinguish those things, if there's not a clear set of competencies that are needed by your leaders in the church, then what's likely to happen is what happened in our church, where we thought we were developing leaders because we were doing a good job training them theologically. And the truth of the matter is that as important as our theology is, as important as it is for people who are leading to be healthy spiritually, they also need to know how to do things like delegation and communication and how to build a team and how to set direction. all those types of things. And so what really helped us was when we clearly defined, here's how we want to train people theologically and spiritually, but here's also how we want to come along and develop certain competencies, certain skills, knowledge we want them to have, habits we want them to embrace and embody. When we began to do that, then that really made a difference in our church. So that the action step there, I think, for you would be to have a clear set of competencies that you're really wanting to train and develop leaders in. The third mistake I made was not having a consistent way to develop all of our leaders. What I didn't have was a consistent way to recruit new leaders, to train existing leaders, and to encourage and evaluate everybody. And so what happened is that we would just change what we were doing all the time. Seemingly every year, maybe every 6 months, we had a new plan and a new strategy for developing leaders. Now, I think, it was from a good place. I wanted to do the best job we can of making sure that what we were producing was the right kind of leaders, and we wanted to do it in a way that was helpful for them. But we didn't actually have a clear plan and a clear strategy that we were just focused on executing. And so it was exhausting for everybody and confusing for a lot of people. And so about 7 years ago, I came across the concept of a leadership pipeline, which is a very simple system that allows you to recruit, train, and encourage and evaluate every single leader in your church. And so we did the work of designing and installing and beginning to run a leadership pipeline. In the course of 18 months, our leadership capacity grew by 800%. And it really is the most significant human element that has redefined our church over the past half decade. And so along with the work of the Holy Spirit, our leadership pipeline and the investment that we have made in leaders by doing something simple and sustainable, by providing a consistent way that people can become leaders, that they can grow and develop as leaders, and so they can know that they're doing a good job, that has been a game changer for us. And so that would be my encouragement for you, is if you don't have a consistent, simple, sustainable leadership development system, then I would encourage you to get one. And I want to help you do that in a few ways. So what you'll see below this video are a handful of resources that we've created for you. So in terms of courage, I want to encourage you to take the next step in beginning to develop a leadership development system. I want you to design, I want you to install, and I want you to begin running a system that allows every single leader in your church to thrive, from volunteers all the way up to your board. And so in terms of clarity, I want to give you a few resources that will help you do that. So below this video, you'll see 3 resources that we've created for you. One is a free resource called 36 Resources for Developing Amazing Leaders. This is a list of not just book-length resources that you can use to develop leaders. You're also going to see the competencies that we have developed as a church to develop leaders. And so you are more than welcome to take those and begin using them in your church, or maybe it'll just serve as a catalyst for you to figure out what you should be doing in your own context. But you can simply click on the link below and you can download that right now and have access to a fantastic resource that we created for you. The second resource we created is a free 1-hour training called How to Develop Amazing Leaders in Your Church. It's a 1-hour online webinar that I created where I walk you step by step through how to create a simple and sustainable leadership development system called a leadership pipeline. The very same system that grew our leadership capacity by 800% in 18 months. The very same system that I've helped churches design and install, from church plants to mega churches. I've worked with over 150 churches in the past year helping them do this. So I know how to do this, and we've been very successful doing this. If you want to learn how to do this for absolutely free, go ahead and register for that online training and be part of that the next time it's available. And then the third resource is not a free resource, but if you're at a place where you've been thinking about leadership development, you're desperate for more leaders, you want a very simple way to develop the existing leaders in your church, if you want a long-term solution for developing leaders, for recruiting new leaders, for training the leaders you have, for encouraging and evaluating every single leader in your church, then click below on the page and where you can get information about Pipeline Academy. Pipeline Academy is an online program that we created to help you design and install your very own leadership pipeline in less than 4 weeks. Process of recruiting, training, and evaluating, building the team that you need to get the work done that God has called you to do in as little as 4 weeks. And so you can go to that link and you can get information about Pipeline Academy. We answer all of your questions. We clearly help you understand what you can be a part of. And then if it's a good solution for you, then I would encourage you to jump in. I love the success stories that we're having about what we're doing with Pipeline Academy. So, courage. Start working on your leadership pipeline. Let's commit to designing, installing, and running a simple and sustainable system that will allow you to develop every single leader in your church. In terms of clarity, go grab one of these resources. 2 free resources, the free online training, the free download that you can get, 36 amazing resources for developing leaders, and then get information about Pipeline Academy. If you've been thinking about a way to develop leaders, if you need help, if you need a clear system and framework that will allow you to recruit, train, and evaluate every single leader in your church, would love for you to take a look at Pipeline Academy and would love for you to become part of what's just been an absolutely fantastic program. So thank you so much for your time and attention in this video. If there's been something here that's been helpful for you, would appreciate it if you hit the like button, if you shared it with other people, and can't wait until I see you on the next episode as we continue to talk about how we make the most out of all that we have been given as leaders. Thanks so much.